what was supposed to be the next big thing, but totally flopped. Google Glass. I heard one of the biggest issues was that it was too heavy and felt uncomfortable, but they literally could not make it any lighter. 3D TV. Clearly remember thinking, these companies have lost their fucking minds. There is practically nothing 3D to watch. TV shows were not available in 3D and were not about to be filmed in 3D. Catalogs of old favorites would never be 3D. It's like the entire 3D industry was made for Avatar, which, while a little bit neat, I never intended to watch a second time. Reminded me of all the bullshit hype surrounding DVDs at first. Like I could watch a scene from Terminator from any angle I wanted. Like I would be able to watch any movie scene from any angle I wanted. Never ever saw that feature utilized. Added, thank you for the helpful feedback on multi-angle viewing. Clearly, I did not watch enough porn DVDs. From what I have gathered in this thread, Google threw a lot of shit to see if it would stick them out. That's basically their business model. I read somewhere, ages ago, that Google was willing to try just about anything their R&D people put out there. And if it didn't look like it was going to be a $1 billion return, they would can it and move on. Also, a lot of things they cancel have features that end up in their mainstream projects, like the conversation view, mail categories, trip thing, snoozing from inbox are all just part of Gmail now. Not entirely relevant, but I like the trend where everybody wanted the smallest cell phone possible. For 20 years cell phones got smaller and smaller, often being the main selling point of the phone. Then all of a sudden you could watch videos on your phone, and almost overnight the trend reversed to larger is better. Google Plus was supposed to be the answer to Facebook. That was a lesson on how not to handle hype. There was so much hype around Google Plus, it was infectious. But they refused to open it up to everyone and maintained a very hardline invite-only system. Even once hype had peaked and there was a notable decline, still they maintained a small invite-only system. I remember by the time they decided to open it up to everyone, the hype was well and truly dead and no one bothered with it. They should have cashed in when hype was high, but they, I assume, got greedy, thinking the hype would just infinitely increase and people would not get bored waiting to get in. Google Wave. It was supposed to replace email with a more collaborative approach. Essentially, it was like a dynamically created discussion board you would share with select people, and you could have a more readable discussion than one with a bunch of forwards and CCs and the like. I thought it was a good idea, but it flopped big time and Google got rid of it after a few years. This was by far the best collaborative platform for planning trips I have experienced. I took a lot of backpacking trips, and we could all combine research, having a collected map, take stock of inventory, etc. in one place. Now I see people putting that stuff into a Google Doc and it kind of sucks by comparison. RIP Google Wave. Airship travel. These were the next awesome way to travel long distances. In fact, the spire on top of the Empire State Building was meant as an anchoring point for airships. The Hindenburg kind of put a damper on it though. The Segway. It was supposed to change the way everyone lived. The invention of the century or something like that. A really big deal. Segways were supposed to revolutionize travel and replace the automobile. Now they are just used for guided tours for dorks and tourist traps. The Dark Universe Cinematic Universe, starting with 2017's The Mummy. I cannot think about that movie without remembering when they accidentally released an incomplete trailer. Best movie trailer ever. I remember watching it when it first debuted, and was so intrigued by the purposeful eerie effect without music. And then the bird hits the pilot, and I am like, oh, they fucked up. That fake fat they put in chips in the 90s that made everyone poop their pants. Edit, thanks for the silver. Obligatory, of course. My top comment is, anal leakage. I was on a Boy Scout camping trip when these were coming out. Someone walked around giving out free bags as a promotion. A bunch of young teenage boys getting a bag with a loose stool warning on it devolved into 48 hours of conversation about nothing but loose stool pretty quickly. The Panama Papers. Another sad thing is that it is all still happening. Oh, and the journalist who did this mysteriously died. Xbox Kinect. I am sad to say I agree. I got an Xbox One when they were bundled with Kinect. The only thing I used it for was Xbox on and Xbox off. Movie Pass. I sure got my money's worth while it was around. I never watched more movies in a month than when I had Movie Pass. Such a horribly consumer-friendly concept that was never going to work long-term. Unfortunately, after I ended my subscription, they signed me back up at least 2 more times without my consent, but I caught on and cancelled before they got any more of my money. This one might be a bit obscure just because I have only ever met one other person familiar with it, but Google's Project Era modular smartphone was looking like it could have been the end-all be-all of smartphones. Based off the phone lock's idea of having a Lego-like hot swappable module phone, the idea was that you could switch out any components of the phone on the fly. Camera, fingerprint scanner, even different quality screens. Conceptually, it really looked like it could take over the phone market, as it would lead to people not having to buy whole new phones anymore, but rather replacement or upgraded parts to a phone they already liked, thereby reducing costs and increasing utility. You don't want a phone with 5 cameras that inflate the cost unnecessarily. Just buy a 1-camera module. You want a 1440p Super AMOLED screen to replace your 720p regular screen. Buy one and swap it in. However, like many Google projects, it died off for myriad reasons and the long-standing era of $1,000 smartphone slabs lived on. Hoverboards. I remember in a span of 3 months everyone had them and showed them off and then they just disappeared. At the time, video calling with your phone completely flopped because 3G could not support it. There was so much advertising about this thing that was meant to be huge, but the tech really didn't work yet. But it did blow up later on with 4G, better phones, Wi-Fi in more public spaces. And COVID. I never video chatted with anyone before COVID. Amazon's shopping buttons. They pushed really hard for those and I never saw the point. Asbestos. Technically it was a hit. Right until it flopped when people figured out the whole inhaling rock fibers is not healthy thing. Soap shoes. These were like normal shoes, but you could grind on rails with them via an indent in the sole. If you heard of these things from somewhere that was not Sonic Adventure 2, please tell me where. And please tell me where I can buy a pair. Windows phones. Microsoft was so confident they would bury the competition that they had a weird funeral procession for the iPhone. Man, one phone cycle I had a Windows phone, and 2 new phones later it was still my favorite. I actually really liked Windows Phone, but I left it like everyone else because it just didn't have the apps. Not sure if this one has totally flopped yet, but I noticed while in Costco the other day that there are no longer any curved TVs. If Costco is no longer carrying them, then I think we can assume they are going the way of the dodo. Man, I remember as a kid seeing the Ninja Turtles and Dick Tracy use video comms and thinking it was so cool and wanting one for myself, and now if someone FaceTimes me I have a panic attack. Star Wars. The Old Republic was supposed to be the World of Warcraft killer. It was honestly a good game, but they botched it on launch by having too many servers, leaving them all feeling vastly underpopulated, making what little endgame content there was worthless since you could not find groups to do it with. Edit. Lot of responses saying a lot of games market themselves as the WoW killer. This is true, but a lot of the hype was not coming from the marketing in this case. It was actually coming from players participating in the beta, and rightfully so because the early game is solid, and there was a good population on the beta servers. Hydrogen cars were a promising new form of motorized vehicle. They were supposed to be incredibly good for the environment, emitting only water as the exhaust. They exist, but not like how some people imagined. I was a pretty big hydrogen car believer at the time. There are some hydrogen stations, but mostly centered around California. Thing is that the hydrogen is quite expensive and not very efficient compared to smaller engines, hybrids, and AVs. The hydrogen is also somewhat inefficient to produce, store, and distribute as well. You can actually get a hydrogen car though, they ray out there. The Toyota Mirai is a really good example. Out of all hydrogen cars, that one is definitely most popular. In fact, Toyota pays for 15,000's worth of hydrogen in your first few years of ownership since it's so expensive. This means that for your first 3-ish years of owning one, you might not have to pay a penny in fuel. As you can see, I am still a hydrogen advocate. Don't expect to be able to take it very far from your nearest hydrogen station though. QR codes. After so many years, they are finally getting some traction during COVID. I wonder if it will last. The biggest problem is that until a few years ago, smartphones didn't read QR codes by default, so you had to have an app for it, which nobody can be bothered with. Eventually Android and iOS added it to their default camera and now they can start being useful. You must live in America. In Asia we use QR codes like crazy. Vikings was trying so hard to ride in Game of Thrones' success, but once Game of the Thron ended with a shitty ending, Vikings sorta fizzled out with it. Google Penis. It was supposed to revolutionize dating. You meet someone online, guy shows his penis to the webcam, and the other person 3D prints that penis and goes to town on themselves, and that way couples can know if they are a good fit before ever hooking up for real. But Google underestimated the number of people with 3D printers. Shame, because it was a genius idea, probably my best. The project failed and I was banned from the campus. Later Google claimed I never even worked there. Thanks for watching. Share your opinion in the comments. Please support the channel by liking and subscribing. It will help a lot.